So, this talk is called There Are No Distractions in Zazen, which is a big, teaching experience, thought, something about that I always talk about with Zazen, and it's probably somewhat counterintuitive. You're sitting there in Zazen and some of your dog starts barking in the backyard and you're like, man, I would just be quiet maybe. Or it could be your own stomach. Yesterday, I don't know why you were here, but my stomach was going crazy during Zazen. They did like a little mini Zazen kind of like 3 or 4 hours of Zazen, and I had some ramen with milk in it, I think, and it was just going blah, 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 the whole time. So it's calling us to attention. But it takes us to the idea. I know that I did this when I started sitting Zazen, and even now, still catch myself doing this where I'm trying, I guess we do it here as well, we try to fashion a peaceful environment around us in order to kind of enter into for Zazen, whether that's a quiet corner of your basement at home, or if it's a quiet part of the day where the kids won't be around, or the neighbors won't be slamming their doors, or anything like that. Or even, early in the morning when your mind is quiet, so it's not just going. So we're trying to fashion this type of atmosphere, like a bubble of peace around ourselves. And that's not necessarily bad, actually. For some of us, for me, that was some of the first real taste of peace that I was able to experience. I finally found this spot where it's like, I can just quiet down and just not have to do anything, just sit, and all the thoughts and sounds and sensations just settle down and spread out away. And although it's not necessarily bad, it can be fragile. So there's a frame that I suggest we can look at Zazen through that can help make it more non-fragile. So the first one is that there is distraction. You can be distracted in Zazen quite easily. This is when the idea that we have of what our Zazen should be at any particular moment is disrupted by something. So this is also dukkha, suffering and dissatisfaction. It's the same type of thing where we set up this idea in our mind about how things should be, and then we hook our emotions onto it, like, ooh, I'm gonna feel good when this certain thing happens, or the reverse, I'm gonna feel bad when this thing happens. And then either it happens or it doesn't, and that difference is disappointment, dukkha. The second one, there is a cause to distraction. So life tends to be overwhelming sometimes, to say the least, and it's natural to cultivate a sphere of control around ourselves. And it's when this sphere of control is broken or we become disappointed in it that leads to the ability to be distracted. 3, there is an end to distraction. There is a way to overcome this relationship with our ideas about how things should be. And 4, that end is Zazen. So Zazen can show us a way to reframe how to deal with what we would call distraction, or even just dukkha, suffering and dissatisfaction. And if you're thinking they sound like the Four Noble Truths a little bit, yes. They're the exact same diagnosis that the Buddha gave 2,500 years ago about how to deal with suffering and dissatisfaction in general can be applied to our Zazen in the way that we interface with the environment around us. So we'll go through the first one and see. There are distractions, yes. When we first find out about Zazen, we're often able to reach out and like form that little bubble of no distractions around us and finally feel peace, sometimes for the very first time. And it's peaceful inside, peaceful outside, and it can be absolutely fabulous. I know it was for me, because I always had this mind that was just going, never stop. And then it would work with my body, like start feeling anxious, and then, ooh, now I'm feeling anxious, and I'm thinking anxious, and then they just start reinforcing each other. But finding a nice spot in my bedroom at a nice time of day, about noontime when nobody's around, silence, peace, no distractions was, and is, wonderful. And for me, I think it's what's typical with other people perhaps. And we begin with the physical part of sitting. How do you get your legs in the proper spot? Do we sit full lotus? No, I can't. Some people can. Half lotus? Can't do that either. Burmese, you can't see, but 2 legs flat on the cushion, yes, I can do that. Seiza, when you're sitting on with your legs underneath you, yes, I could do that. In a chair, lying down. What do you do with the back? What do you do with the shoulders? What do you do with the eyes? It takes a long time to be able to get to the point where you're able to figure out the actual physical mechanics of sitting. And you never really figure it out. Since, over the long term, the body is changing along with the sitting. But there is, that initial time of, just learning how to physically sit properly so that you won't be in so much pain while you're doing it. And then, for me, once the physical aspect is kind of taken care of to a degree, you can kind of start working more subtle things like the mind. My mind's just going a million miles per hour during Zazen. Like, how do I take care of that? Unless there's like the first part of a chorus of a song is just going over and over again in my mind. Like, what do I do with that? Thinking about something someone said to you, or you have a project at work that's just nagging at you, like, what do you do with that? You start finding ways to quiet the mind, stop feeding energy into those mental movements. And then there's this nice synergy that sometimes can develop where once you've got some of the physical parts of Zazen taken care of, and then some of the mental ones, then you can kind of go back and then take another look at the physical and be like, oh, wait a second, I'm like, my foot's always going asleep. How do I take care of that? And take care of that. And there's like, these new mental things that are popping up, much more subtle, maybe more gross, depending on how it is. And you can just keep feeding into each other. It's like chipping away at a big block of granite, and you're going to find that statue underneath it. You don't just start with the face perfect and then carve the rest of the body. You get the shape, and you refine, and you refine, and you refine. But Zazen is a statue that never actually finishes, always refining constantly. Let's see. And you can, I know for me, I did a lot of home practice. Some people start in the temple, but with my home practice, or just when we're there, we have that sphere that we cultivate, that quiet sphere. And, you take that Zazen that is working so well when you have like a little bubble hermetically sealed off from the world, and you come to the temple, for instance, and we don't have the acorns anymore, but for a couple months, some of us remember, there's an assault of acorns just dropping from the trees, hitting the top roof, rolling, hitting the second roof, rolling, hitting the porch, hitting the metal furniture, just like a war of the tree against the temple, just non-stop. Sometimes squirrels have been quiet lately, but sometimes in the morning the squirrels are screaming at each other, barking at each other, chasing each other, tearing up the grounds. There's loud cars, sneezing, coughing, fidgeting. I like to fidget. When it's so quiet, even when I move my foot just a little bit, it sounds like, wow, it's like so loud and it's quiet. And the distractions, these types of things don't even have to be outside of ourselves. Like I was talking earlier, it could be inside, songs or daydreaming, or, I like to plan my day while I'm sitting Zazen sometimes. Like the perfect time, since you're so calm, you don't have to bring so much nervous energy to it, and you can see clearly. I'm not saying you shouldn't do your planning during Zazen, but it can be a distraction. The metaphor for this that I like to use is that often Zazen is us as if we're looking at the surface of a pond, and if we're able to cultivate a very nice bubble of peace, it's like we're looking at the flat surface of the pond, and it's so flat and so calm that you can look down and see the bottom. You can see all the seaweed and the little fish moving around and the pebbles. Or if you turn just the right way, you can reflect the entire sky and the surface perfectly. And we tend to like that. Ooh, look at this beautiful clear mirror. And that's not an issue. If you have the beautiful clear mirror, that's great. But the issue becomes when we expect the beautiful clear mirror all the time. We hook our emotions up to it, and when we don't have it. So when a pebble or a hits that surface, and then all of a sudden there's all these ripples, and we can't see the bottom, we can't see the sky in it. We're upset, like, oh, what happened to this beautiful clear mirror that I had? Now it's just completely covered in ripples. There's nothing wrong with the ripply surface, actually. A ripply surface happens. Sometimes there's gigantic waves if there's some type of, it's true. If somebody cannonballs into the pond, that's completely fine as well. The problem isn't somebody don't cannonball into there. The problem isn't with the ripples, it's not with the disturbance on the water, it's with, being emotionally invested in the clearness of the water, of the surface. So you're like, what is actually being disturbed? Is it really the water? It's the self, it's the I, it's the me, it's this whole confluence of self and karma and expectation that we've cultivated over a lifetime. Like, that's what's being disturbed. The water doesn't, it's fine being in any shape that it can be in. So for this, give a little bit of advice on each section. So most of us don't need advice on figuring out what disturbs us or what bothers us. That's usually pretty obvious. Not always. There are layers to it, but typically, if you are just vibing with Zazen and then a car horn honks loud, oh, that disturbed me. You don't need to figure that out. But it's really, usually it's, a dog barking is, it's not even so much the dog barking, it startles us, but the emotional reaction, I'll get into it a little bit later, I believe. It's like hooked up with the entire life. If you're having like when I was working at the factory, like any little thing would set me off, and it really wasn't like the guy passing in the car, or it wasn't the dog barking, but it was like, I have no control. I felt like I had no control in one part of my life, and then here I've got control. I can be at peace. Somebody's disturbing my peace. Why are they doing that? Well, that's the rest of my entire life popping up in Zazen. It's hard to hide from yourself when you're staring at the wall for half hour, however long it is every day. Yeah. So what the advice would be is not so much to study that smooth surface. The smooth surface comes and goes, but to study our emotional investments and reactions to that smooth surface. And when I'm saying smooth surface, I mean like that peace that we cultivate or that we expect in Zazen. Yeah. It's easy to get mad at someone in traffic, but it's not as easy to restructure your entire life so that you don't get angry in traffic. That's tough. That's the project of Zen, really, is to restructure that entire life in order that when the guy zooms by you, you just like, go fare forth well, friend. It's possible, that and I always said that inner dog, dog sees another dog and it's just like, oh, I don't like that guy. Like from the window. Like that's in us too. Somebody passes you, oh, I don't like that guy. It's fine to have that impulse, at first impulse of like, oh, but to just keep feeding it, that's the unskillful part of it. So the second one is there is a cause of distraction. What is that cause? We tend to have a plan about how the world should be and how it would be to our liking. And when it doesn't conform to that, we tend to get upset. And that upset is dukkha, suffering and dissatisfaction. That's the kind of spiritual discontent that the Buddha diagnosed 2,500 years ago. That's the heart of the practice right there. It's where everything turns around. And it can be more subtle and it can be more like just in your, like really in your face. But typically the dukkha that arises in Zazen will probably be more subtle, but it's still just as profound and upsetting to us, just because it's so normal. When I even think about it as something that's an issue. Yeah, this is the cause. We're able to fashion an entire world in the mind that only sort of corresponds to the world out there, as it is. And this is the world of our preferences, of our picking and our choosing. Like in the Jin Jin Ming, it says, the great way is easy. Just don't pick and choose. So that's simple. Don't have any preferences. And, you think about that and like, well, that seems crazy. I don't think that it's not, having preferences is not necessarily a bad thing, right? If you're gonna go hunt mushrooms out in the woods, you're gonna wanna be picky and choosy about what you're gonna eat, because if you get the wrong one, you're done. The real issue is how we set our emotions on this world that we create in our minds, but when it doesn't actually manifest the way that we would like it to. It's like having a really expensive meal, like on a silver platter, I guess, and you put it on a table that's got wobbly legs, right? And you just start shaking. Like, why would you do that? Why would you put it on like a wobbly table? Like, do you not even see that the table's wobbly? I think some people don't. And then if it falls on the ground, you're gonna be upset. Like, shouldn't you just find a table that's not wobbly? Well, that's what we're trying to do in Zazen. Let's find a table that's sturdy. So the advice I would have for this part is, notice when we're picking and choosing. Notice when we're using our preferences to guide us through the world, and kind of watch and study that. See how our emotions are both used to choose what we're picking and choosing, how we're sorting them out, like what parts we like, what parts we don't like. This study is like what Daishin was talking about last week. To study the Buddha way is to study the self. That's Dogen's, one of his main core teachings. This, watching our emotions when we're dividing the world up, is studying the self. It's an aspect of studying the self. Like, you wake up like, I want to go to work. I'd rather just stay at home in bed. That's a preference. You're picking and choosing. Sometimes maybe you should stay home. You're sick. Other times you probably should go into work because you're needed there, and it's something we all agreed to do. In that situation, just see how your emotions are coming into this. If you, like when I would go to work, I would just be like, I'm like, sit in Zazen, see that I am a little bit rowdy today, and then know that today I'm gonna be hard to deal with. I'm gonna be like, on a bit of a short leash. Just to even know that, instead of just to go into it with no idea how you're acting or why you're acting. Just every little piece of information is good for the practice and for acting more skillfully in the world. What is the one? I'd rather be in a world where, I'd rather be telling yourself, I'd rather be in a world where that dog isn't barking, but we are in the world where that dog is barking. We're noticing these stories we tell ourselves about how things are or how they aren't, and how that can guide us into how beat ourselves up or engage with other people, like the dog's barking all morning, going to work, take it out on somebody. or I don't know, the checking account is short today. Oh, I'm gonna yell at my wife. Something like that. Just do something unskillful, transferring this emotional energy from one thing to another. Very good to look out for. For 3 and 4, there is an end to distraction, and that end is Zazen. So Dogen's advice is to turn the light inward and study the self. So instead of looking out at this world of preferences, we're turning it inward and looking at our relationship to this world that's out there, actually. We're leaving the world of preferences and instead focusing on our relationship to this world of preferences and our reactions to it. And here we're specifically talking about Zazen. This is where our little laboratory of studying the self. But we take the knowledge we gain in Zazen up with us out into the world. So it kind of fills every part of our lives. So that's right, for example, when we're sitting Zazen and the person next to us sneezes, if we are relying emotionally on this sphere of silence that we've cultivated to also to reflect into us, so that the inner peace and the outer peace. I need the outer peace to have the inner peace, and that outer peace is broken. It can seem like an attack on our peace, or emotionally it's like, oh, I just wish that would stop. It's sneezy season right now. I actually have the allergy medication going through me right now, so otherwise I would be very watery eyes and sneezy, so you'll all be getting a dose of that. But getting mad at anything, even stuff that's arising in our own mind, we have this idea of perfect Zazen. Something is disturbing this perfect, ideal peace that I am trying to cultivate. If instead of doing that, we turn our attention on our feelings of discontent, of dukkha, that's the real way to do this. And speaking of stomach's going, good thing it's loud. The way I like to put it is a sneeze can be a catalyst for self-inquiry. As soon as that sneeze disturbs our Zazen, we start immediately. You can hear that sneeze echoing in our mind as a memory. You start having these it's roiling up inner thoughts, emotions. Either I want, like, Jesus, that was loud, or like, is he going to do it again, or anything. We start watching that, seeing how our mind is so easily disturbed, so easily stirred up. A way that this, or as way of illustration, I have this story. I don't know if I've told the lawnmower story here before. I've mentioned it before to some people. But this is kind of a way to show how this study can work out in your life. How it worked out in mine. So when I was working at the factory, I didn't like to go. Didn't want to go. So I'd be upset. I didn't feel like I had much control over my life. I felt like I was stuck there. So I would really fashion, I'd even just, not on purpose, but intuitively would fashion these zones of control that I would hold on to. And sleep was one of those zones of control that, like, if somebody disturbed my sleep, I gave myself the emotional license to be crazy. Like, oh, you disturbed my sleep? I'm gonna go nuts. I'm gonna make your life very uncomfortable in the same way that I have perceived you've made my life very uncomfortable. Very unskillful. Don't suggest acting like this in the world. And so I worked second shift, in at 2 p.m., out at 10 p.m. So my sleep schedule was wild. I sleep at 4 a.m., up at noon. For years, that's my natural cycle. I feel the most at ease when I'm doing this, sleeping like that. But the rest of the world does not function on this schedule. So if somebody, and I was in an apartment at this time, and if somebody were to come and mow the lawn, it's not going to be afternoon time. It's going to be like 9 or 10 a.m. And this is a regular weekly, bi-weekly occurrence during summertime. So, if it's at 9 a.m., that's cutting my sleep off by 3 hours. And it would wake me up every time. Like, oh my God. I would never go out and harass the lawnmower man. But, I would, as soon as I heard it, like all these negative emotions and thoughts would stir up. It's like my entire life blew up. And I didn't know it at the time, but now upon further consideration, after the rest of the story, so I'm going to fast forward. I'm going to go backwards in time. And like one of the real reasons why I had such a negative emotional reaction goes back to like my youth when my dad was a snorer, like the type of snoring where you think he's going to die. You're concerned for his health. Stops breathing. Okay, now he's breathing again. That type of thing. And we would go on, family trips. And have to sleep in the same hotel room. And I would end up I'm a bit of a light sleeper, so I would have to like sleep in the tub. Literally! Or you wouldn't sleep for the entire week. And I would just, if something disturbed my sleep, I would get so mad. This is karma, what was my way of dealing with this situation? Get super mad. Did it help anybody? Not really, but it was just, I did it, and because I did it, there was an inertia for me to do it again, and it was just all through my life, I just kept doing it. It didn't make me feel any better, but that's the ignorance part of it, like the fundamental ignorance you have, like, is it making me feel better? Have I ever even stopped to think about that? No. So this must have been, I don't know how many years ago. I think I was a Shuji student at that time, so 5, 6. It's like shockingly recent that this story occurs. I was sitting Zazen one day, and I don't know if it was summertime, but it was later in the day. Maybe he came later in the day, and I was just, sitting in my little zone of peace, vibing, just sitting Zazen, listening to everything all around. And then the lawnmower starts up, and normally I'd be like, there it is again. This time though, that energy, the negative energy and the karma did not rise up because I was so at peace during Zazen. I was actually able to listen to what the lawnmower sounded like. And it was like these two metal drones that were, you could kind of, how you can hear or feel the wave forms of sound sometimes. One's going, and this, I've talked about these waves before, so maybe I have. One's going like this, and they're like dancing together almost through the air as like vibrations. And every now and then they would kind of do that, and they would break apart, and they would kind of come back together, and it was just like, it was like the most beautiful thing I've ever heard in my entire life at that moment. It was insane. A lawnmower. Usually you hear the lawnmower, and then all these images come up of like chunky grass that's been mushed and smashed on the blades, and then like exhaust, and it stinks, and it's loud, and right? Maybe people really like to mow the lawn, but this is how I felt about it. But at this point, it just sounded absolutely stunning. A lawnmower. And that, like, for some reason, these weird things, karma, how it interacts with your life, it broke that cycle. The Buddha talks about how if you can break a chain of ignorance at one link, and then you just break the entire chain completely. So this chain got broke in that moment, and I never got upset about a lawnmower ever again. And even the snoring doesn't bother me at all. Like, not even like a little bit. That just sitting there in Zazen, really listening, not bringing these unskillful karmic strategies up, just broke it to pieces. It's crazy. So I'm like, how do I turn that into advice for all of you? When we are, when we turn our senses inward, we kind of turn them outward as well. So I was watching the inside, but also watching the outside. There's no real distinction between inside and outside. The same mental apparatus that creates inside also creates outside. They're not really different. So we watch them both equally with this inner light, the light that we cultivate when we're sitting in Zazen, the light that's kind of like looking around, thinking about things, watching how our feet hurt, listening to the outside, that light, or turning it in and pointing it at us. We're studying our reactions to all the stimuli that are happening around us. We're not holding on to them, we're not pushing them away, we're not ignoring them, we're like honestly looking at them as they occur. And in this way, we deprive our unskillful habits of the energy they need to continue. So by looking at that lawnmower, really listening to it, I broke that chain of just that had been going on for, I don't know, 30 years probably. Just shattered it. Just the real idea is to be aware of all the phenomena that occur during Zazen. And when we're watching them all, studying them all, not trying to push them away, peace is a byproduct of that awareness, of that concentration. And we're like, we're actively maintaining focus on this present moment, and all phenomena arise inside of it. That's kind of what we're trying to do. We simply study everything as it arises instead of judging it, but just looking at it as it is. In the metaphor of the pond and the ripples, we're just looking at the surface. Whether there's a million ripples on it and it's obscuring this clear light, this peace that we're hoping for, or if there's waves and there's a gigantic, and it's just. So I'm talking about our inner emotions. If our inner emotions are flat and clear and peaceful, we look at that. Or if they're roiling and wild, we also look at that. Or if we are so completely at peace we don't even notice what's happening. Just looking at it. We're not hoping that it's going to be one way or another. Like before I was giving this talk, for some reason, like I had like anxiety level amount of like heartbeat. Like my body's like, don't get up there and talk in front of everybody. My mind was very at peace because I've been meditating. Like it's like the end of a little mini sesshin. The body's just going. Just look at it. I'm not going to take my anxiety's advice on what to do. If I did, I'd be like running down the street. I'd be like on a plane back to Michigan. I'm like, no. Just watch it, accept it for what it is, see that it has an opinion about how things should go, but other parts of the self have different opinions. And it's kind of watching those and studying those and seeing which ones are skillful and which ones are unskillful. And sometimes it takes time. Sometimes in one situation, one reaction could be skillful, and the exact same reaction in a different situation, not skillful. So everything really is dependent on like a myriad of factors that are occurring. And there's a super secret fifth thing I thought to mention while I was sitting in Zazen. I'm like, wait, there's a fifth thing where, every now and then, we're the water. We're the still surface. We're the rippled surface. We're the wind. We're the sky. We're the lake bottom. We're the entire earth. This whole world of peace above and below the water. We realize that we are all of that sometimes as well. So, in wrapping this up, remind everyone to, yes, there is distraction. It does occur. But there is a cause to it, and that cause is our emotional relationship to how we would like things to be. There is an end to distraction, and that end is Zazen. So we watch how we react with our own mind, how we interact with our own mind, how we interact with how we think things should be, how we interact with how things are. And yes, if we're able to really just watch this, we can cultivate a peace that is not dependent on conditions. It's just dependent on our willingness to look and to accept what is happening. So I hope that your Zazen is both peaceful and productive. comments on that?
Thank you, Shinkyu. Benji speaking. So when you are practicing Zazen and let's say your face itches,
Today,
do you itch it every time? Do you itch it sometimes? What's your recommendation on that? Your experience on that?
Well, it depends. If there's a whole bunch of people around, typically I won't move. There's a little bit of peer pressure. If I'm by myself, sometimes it's like 50-50, I'm like, should I itch it? It's good. Well, the thing I found is that if I itch one itch, then I notice other things as well, right? So I would say to study what the itch feels like and study all the weird things your body's doing to make you want to itch it. Right? You start like getting anxiety, at least I do. Bubbly gut is what I call it, like your stomach's like feeling upset, or just that electric charge that's running through your body, trying to get you to do everything to do that. But that's like a little mini lab about everything. You're at the store and there's like a whole bunch of candy bars and your body's doing that same thing. It's giving you not a direct itch, but it's making like a metaphorical itch, like just buy it, just get it. Or sometimes for skillful things, but it's the same type of itch that happens when someone zips past you on the highway and you're upset and you're like, ooh, I'm gonna get him. So it's good to just understand how that body can't talk in words, but it talks in emotions and sensations. And the longer you can go without scratching that itch, the more information you have and the more karma you're building up to be able to step back from that sensation and see if itching it is skillful or unskillful. So that's like the thing. One day you can scratch it, that could be a skillful practice. Another day you could hold back and that wouldn't be skillful. It's really dependent on the situation, and you have to be the one that figures out whether it's skillful or not. You might not know until after the fact. You might be like, you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Dang. But that's another little point of information you have on the study of yourself. A little scientific notebook about how I act, why I act, what happens when I do certain things. It's all data and the study that you're conducting. Melvin, you had something.
Hi, Melvin. In my practice, I've just recently come back to practice that when I lived in Minnesota, I was a student of Katakuri, and he talked about shikantaza, just sitting, and to me, when I sit, for me personally, it's very important for me to count my breaths 1 through 10 and concentrate on my breath going in and out. The more I do that, the less distractions, the more peaceful, and the waves, quietness spreads out, the lawnmower stops, the dog stops barking. It's very powerful, and I miss it. Like, this is kind of an emotional experience for me being here today. When we were doing the no mind, no body, I had to fight the tears back, but it's and keep control, not burst into tears, keep control and recite the mantra and do what's in front of me. But I hope I'm not just flapping my jaws, It's like, I think it's very important to concentrate on your posture, your breathing, and just counting. That's simple. And I try not to add anything to it, just keep it as pure as I can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, Melvin, what day was it? Thursday? You showed up for the monks?
Yeah,
Yeah, Melvin popped up on Thursday night with the monks and he mentioned that he'd studied with Katagiri. I'm like, wow, very cool. So I wanted to find out more. So it's excellent to have you here. It's good to see you. I'm glad we were able to make it. I'll talk with you later.
yeah.
You have something, Ken? Can I make you say something?
Sure. You can make me say something.
I can't make it do anything.
Yeah, I suppose while you were talking, I'm like, this sounds like it's our attachment to emptiness, isn't it? Yeah.
You
Love
can-
of the,
Can you attach to it? Yeah.
yeah, I like what you're saying. It's really the not so much not being attached, but like studying what's already there and studying the attachment itself. I found for me personally, personifying sorts of impulses. So like if I'm
Yeah.
upset about something, it's like looking at a child that's upset. I mean, it's a lot of juice there.
Yeah.
Right now for me, is because it's the being upset about the secondary emotions are so much more disturbing than anything else. And, able to hold the secondary emotion, like identify and then hold with some sort of compassion. I feel like that's what you're talking about.
That's a big part of it. I feel like I engineered from scratch, like the internal family system style of stuff just by watching.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, this is something I developed when I was like 5 years old or 4 years old, or like it was handed to me by my parents, and I've just kept it alive as a little person in my body, right? Like I think I've said before, like, if you take advice on how to regulate your emotions from a 4-year-old, there are some very smart, there are some very
Yes.
astute 4-year-olds, but not this 4-year-old. Lovely kid, but man, didn't know how things. This guy, not beat himself up, right?
The 4-year-old named mom and dad definitely took that advice.
Right? Yeah. So it's a lot of it, like you were saying, it's compassion. That's the other part. I don't think I mentioned it as much, but that's the real emptiness, which is, everything is always changing, which means that we don't just have the ability to be able to change ourselves. We actively have to work to not change. Like we have to hold on to those old unskillful methods by putting energy into them every time they pop up. Like if we don't, then they just kind of fall to the wayside. Like that one time I heard the lawnmower. For whatever reason, there was enough energy there to wake me up to what I was doing to break that cycle. It should have been able to have happened years ago, but I just kept feeding those impulses, right?
Yeah, I like what you said about the about the lawnmower. Like once you kind of were able to see very clearly that it had its kind of own nature. Right? Yes. The two blades and the way the different wavelengths played off of each other. I was like, while you said that, I thought, God, if I could see these like, I'll call them angry children.
Yeah, sure.
Like, if I could see them in me the way that you see the lawnmower, because usually you're world living, it's like, I don't feel that way.
Yeah. There are transferable, I wouldn't say skills, I'd call them shapes of practice almost. Like, I was writing this and then writing this talk and then practicing with it to be like, am I just full of it? I'm just making this stuff up, or like it's something I really did. Yeah, so I was practicing with it and I was listening to the birds. We listen to the birds sometimes in Zazen, like, it's nice. And you can't really hear, you hear the birds, but we don't really know what they're doing. Like, they're yelling about something or they're singing about something. But at the same time, the monks were here and they were in the kitchen making breakfast. And they're all in, so there's like 6 guys in the kitchen making breakfast. Imagine what that sounds like. Even when they're trying to be quiet. And so we're in here seeing Zazen and it's just going and going. And there's something about the human world even though they're speaking Tibetan, I'm drawn to it, like, what, ooh, what's going on there? Not even subconsciously, but just listen. And then you can kind of, there's a secondary part of me that's like, I just wish they would be quiet. Like, why is it so loud? And even though they're, waking up to eat. And I thought about it, I'm like, well, how do I listen to the birds? Like, what? Like, I just listen to them and appreciate the sound, right? So I just took that shape of practice, like that shape of me and bird, and like somehow picked it up and transferred it to me and monks. And I was just vibing, just so calm, at peace. They're just doing their thing, and it's just me and the floor. And it was almost like a lawnmower situation where it was great. Going from being like, to, ooh, I love that sound. Strange. So with like you and the child, like your inner children, you can find peace in one part of your practice and learn to pick it up, put it on that. It's difficult and it's piecemeal perhaps, and it's going to take a while, but it's possible.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've thought about that, and I mean, you get the greatest clarity while sitting, right? Almost thought about it sitting in a place where I like create space for mind to be noisy.
Yeah, that's
So it can say what it needs to say.
absolutely. It doesn't always need to be peaceful in there. That's not the issue, right?
Yeah, I almost wonder that's a thing, like level of inviting it almost, which is
It's not standard Zazen.
not standard Zazen.
But I'm an advocate. I didn't sit standard Zazen for like 20 years, so I'm an advocate of playing with Zazen, seeing, like maybe today, I'll just sing a song in my head for like an hour. Who cares? Who's going to tell you can't do that? And if it doesn't do anything conductive or conducive for your practice, don't do it again. That's another point you've learned. Or if you want to bring these voices up, take a half hour or something, just do it, see what happens. The worst you can do is be like, I won't do that again.
Appreciate that permission from you. It's no, it's good.
Don't tell Dogen that I
That's
said
helpful.
that. It'll haunt my dreams. Come back with a bird and Zazen noises.
Come back as a lawnmower man.
Yeah. Dogen lawnmower says. I took care of that. Music can't bother my Zazen.
That'll be the set.
Yeah, oh yeah. Out there doing that. Yeah. Did you have any other comments? Oh, Tom?
Yeah, no, I appreciate your example with the birds versus people, because I came to the exact same conclusion
Nice.
with the exact same examples.
Sure.
Actually, I'll have to speak about that myself. But one of the difficulties I have is still like low information content disruptions. I can handle, I've always been able to handle lawnmowers, dogs barking, but it's the ones that carry information, conversations, television in the background, music, which really, it's even worse if it's something I like, 'cause it hooks into me, right, and pulls
Sure.
me out. So those are things I still work with a little bit. They're not as difficult as they used to be.
Yeah.
But I have a question, and this has to do with guided mindfulness. I really don't like it, because I sit there and I'm thinking, you're telling me to pay attention to my breath. But what am I supposed to do? Pay attention to my breath, or pay attention to you telling me to pay attention to my breath? I've learned to kind of broaden my attention to kind of encompass both of those. But I just wondered what your perspective on guided meditation was, kind of, in terms of divided attention.
They didn't exist in my practice, or I didn't really know that they even existed until not too long ago. Like when the apps started having, like the meditation timer apps started having them. Some people really, really like them. And I think for a beginner, or if you want to experience a new type of meditation, like I have actually done the first time I did metta, loving kindness meditation. I did that as a guided meditation, because I didn't know how to do it. So there's like some Australian lady, you might run into her on YouTube. She was just giving the instructions, and I went through the whole thing. So it really depends on the person. I can't really give a yay or nay to it, however it intersects with your life at that moment. But I say, whenever people end up doing guided meditation, other than, Daishin has done some that I thought were really good. But anybody else that I've run into, I usually just zone out and start doing Zazen. I'm like, you guys, sorry, Geshe was doing a guided meditation last night, and that's what I do. I stop listening to the content, listen to the sound. I've been doing Zazen for so long. It might be an interesting thing to actually try to do some guided meditations to see if I can break myself out of the habit of always falling into Zazen. So I'm always of the opinion that you should be challenging your Zazen, wherever you're comfortable with it. Try to break it. But do it skillfully. Don't speak with other practitioners maybe, or teachers or whatever, but yeah. Or if Zazen is going really well for you, stick with the good Zazen. But I'm always of the, well, there was a thing last time, yeah, this is like breaking meditation, which I thought was great. The Geshe was doing this very long, intricate visualization meditation where you, or visualizing Avalokiteshvara, four-armed Avalokiteshvara was glowing white and got the blue jewel and the red mantra coming out. And we're like an hour in, I think. And he's just been going and going and going. And right to like the real peak of the hill before we start going down is a part where he does a mantra. At the very end, he says, Ari, which is, I can't remember, it's kind of like a call to action. So in this case, it was like, we've been building up emptiness, like there's no form, everything's non-substantial in its essence, and everything kind of melts into each other. And if this, he tells us beforehand, it's like when I do really just envision the entire universe as this blue expanse, and all the objects in it are insubstantial and melting into each other. And as soon as he says Ri, a little kid is just laughing so loud. And I'm like, I don't know if this works with Tibetan practice, but this like little Zen master shtick where they're like, that's just all, and all of a sudden, bam, knock you back into this present moment. That's like breaking your concentration, your comfort with your meditation. I thought like, that's so perfect. I don't know how anybody else felt about it, but I'm like, if I had been bold enough to insert my ego or myself into Geshe's lecture, that would have been the perfect time to do it. Just be like, bah! But yeah, I mean, everything's empty, everything's always changing. The form that we take on in Zazen is a form that we willfully take on. It doesn't have to always look like, literally, it seems like we're doing the exact same thing when we sit down to Zazen, but every single time it's completely different because Zazen is not this thing that exists outside of us. It's an intersection of the way we sit, what we do with our minds, and our present life, which includes everything, going all the way back to the beginning of the universe, right? All of our unskillful practices that we've cultivated, that have been given to us, that our parents learned, that they were given to them, going all, back to like swinging in trees when we were like amoeba in the ocean. Like all that is still right here, and it's in the Zazen. Well, that seems very woo-woo, but it's true. It's always different. So if you can tweak it a little bit, tweak it, see if it works. Don't be scared. It's your practice. It's your life. No one can tell you what to do with it but yourself. But Dogen does have very good advice. So also rely on the Buddha Dharma. If that's the path you're on, there's some solid advice there as well. So it's always this play between this is how it's done and this is how it actually looks in your life. How does that? How do those two things fit together? There's always a push and pull, right? And that's why we have the Sangha teachers. Sure.
Probably a stupid question, but I've never done this before.
Oh, sure.
So is there a certain way you have to sit or breathe?
Typically we sit and say, this is the worst way to illustrate what my legs are like, but sit, like that's fine too. Basically the real key is a straight back as much as you can, like this. Sometimes I say to tuck your chin. We do this sometimes, although my back is injured from years at the factory. I sit like this a lot. The real key is straight back. And then kind of look in with the eyes a little bit. Yeah. And then usually when we first begin, follow the breath for a while, and we'll count in 1, 2, 3, and you're kind of waiting to
To the
point.
in breath you count.
So you breathe in. You breathe the number. Like, wow, let it out. 1. You know, in the mind. Usually, and when you get to 10, you start over again with 1. And yeah, some people, that's the whole practice, the breathing practice. The way the Dogen did it was once you are reliably able to not have your mind wander everywhere. Like I can get from 1 to 10 a couple times without being super distracted, and then you just sit, you stop relying on anything. That's like the form of no form. So there's the form of the body, then the mind is just whatever's happening. Like listen to the beats. Feel what your legs feel like. Like these things will announce themselves in your practice. You don't have to go looking for stimuli, it's all right there. Basically, you're just seeing how they arise and then fall away. So it's in the practice of noticing the impermanence of things. You're not holding on to any sensation. You're not pushing anything away, so you're actively watching and you're not ignoring them. So whatever comes up, it can be pretty intense sometimes, but yeah, you're basically just studying everything that's happening in the moment, and that can be external stimuli, internal. You're watching how you interact with it. You're watching your reactions to everything. There's just an infinite amount of things that are happening in any particular moment. Although a lot of time you feel like nothing's happening. Everything's happening. Everything in the entire universe is happening right where we're right here. You know, there's so much that to pay attention to and to be appreciative of, and to maybe even earmark for like later investigation or change. A lot of it is just coming face to face with like, who and what we are. It's interesting. It can be a very profound practice. It can be super boring sometimes. Good, you know? Feel that boredom, study that boredom. It can be really exciting at other times, somewhere in between, all at once. Yeah, it's very interesting. But it's always changing. Like what it will look like in 10 years could be, or what could look like tomorrow. What it could look like in the next 30 minutes sit, completely different from the first one. You never know. Yeah. But if you have more questions, let me know afterwards. I can talk about this all day. I do sometimes. Do you have something?
Oh, I was wondering if you could explain to him the mudra.
Oh, that's right. Well, yeah, so we do, sometimes we do, this is the classic cosmic mudra. If you're right-handed, you put the right hand down, left hand on top, and then thumbs touch lightly. That's the classic, this is the classic Zazen pose of this. Very upright. So basically you're trying to balance, find a balance between the body and gravity so that you're not having to engage the muscles. You're letting the entire earth do the sitting for you. You're just finding a location where gravity can take over. Yeah. It's like real mystical like that kind of, but also very practical. Anybody else have anything?
I just have a quick one, I know we're running long. When I first started sitting, so the thing that I got from it that was most useful to me when I first started sitting, it's that piece of it where, you know, you're looking on purpose at whatever's arising, you're not identifying with it. And to me that was useful because particularly with like difficult thoughts or emotions, like being able to unhook kind of takes the edge off. It doesn't take it away, but it kind of removes that impediment of just kind of letting it do its thing, right? But it was a long time before I felt like I was able to get to a place where I actually like fully realized like you can have all kinds of shit going on like in your head, in your body, and you can still find a sense of peace within that even. And it almost feels like, I mean, this sounds I don't know, I don't wanna say flow state, but that is kind of exactly what it is, like, it's just,
Yeah.
and the part that was really pivotal for me in that was, you said compassion, and it's easy to talk about compassion, well, it's easy to say it, but just to define the term, like, if you wanna get really granular about it, like, it's, for me, like a quality of awareness, and it's spacious, and it's warm, and it's curious, and because without that, your practice can, I feel like, I don't know, for me, my practice felt like a little dry.
Oh,
And
yeah.
but once I was able to invite that compassion piece, then it's like a little more juicy. Then you're able to deal with the emotions that are, the visceral stuff that can be really difficult, and you're able to hold space for it in a way that doesn't feel so like clinical, I guess, and I think that can, I don't know, for me, that compassion piece and being able to really think about like, well, what is that, and have a felt sense of it in my body and click into that was really, really helpful, and it really changed a lot for me going forward from that point.
I know, I could be at fault with being more intrigued in the dry aspect of Zazen, but yeah, compassion there's the watching, and then there's the cultivation of compassion. You really need both of those, because you can cultivate this warrior style Zazen where you're just like, I could just sit, no matter how painful it is, I'm just gonna not even know about it. And you take that out into the world with you, and you just bulldoze other people. You're like, why aren't you like this? Like, aren't you stupid? Why aren't you doing, like, why are you running around like hurting yourself? That's the compassion part of it, where you realize I've just been, well, me personally, big dummy for a long time. Like, why? I didn't even know why. Just running around causing destruction, and being like, oh, that's the ignorance. It manifests differently in everybody's life, but you don't know what you don't know, right? And being able to take people where they're at, like you wouldn't, I guess some people do, but you wouldn't treat a little child like a 30-year-old adult, right? Like, why are you so upset when you're hungry? No, that's unskillful, right? Same thing with yourself, you got little 5-year-old people inside of you still, right? Why are you beating yourself up? You're beating that little guy up. Yeah, that is a huge, even with the lawnmower thing, that's like almost compassion for myself, compassion for the lawnmower. The lawnmower being, as Shuji would say, don't treat the lawnmower being as if it's an enemy. It has a job to do as well. It's just doing its job. It's cutting the grass. Why am I getting so upset about this? I should be thanking it. Thank it, because it helped me break through these chains of ignorance, right? Like, there's nothing but, compassion and thanks towards this machine that just doesn't seem like it's just a dumb hunk of metal. You could think about it like that, but it teaches the Buddha Dharma as well, right? I worry about. I guess I'm getting towards more like the more universal compassion, like everything should be, treat the rocks with compassion, your neighbors with compassion, yourself with compassion, teaching everything. There's a reason why the word for mind and heart is the same word, like heart, mind, shin. That's not the same shin that I have, but Son Shin, my Dharma sibling, is the same shin. Looks like a little heart, but it also means mind. They don't see a difference between the two aspects, quote unquote, of being. We see things, we tend to rip them apart into two pieces, but thoughts have emotions hooked into them. And then emotions have thoughts hooked into them. So yeah, if you're just cultivating that Zazen, just doing the mind, you have a whole other half of it that's being neglected. Really, to bring the two together. Absolutely.